The boarding gate echoed with the final call. Pre-boarding closes in 6 minutes. Dr. Marcus Hale stepped into the first-class cabin, coat folded, ticket in hand. Seat 2A. His seat was already taken. A man in a linen jacket looked up, smirked. "People like you don't fly first on this route." The words landed heavier than the engines outside. Marcus blinked once, steady. "My name's on the manifest." The attendant hesitated, scanning both passes, lips pressed thin. Passengers turned, pretending not to stare. A phone lifted a small red light recording. The air smelled of citrus wipes and suspicion. A countdown voice broke the silence again. 5 minutes to close the gate, close. Marcus stood still, spine straight, the only man not moving and somehow the only one who seemed out of place in his own seat. Have you ever been judged before anyone even asked your name? Where are you listening from tonight? New York, Nairobi, Manila, or somewhere in between? Tell me in the comments and make sure you hit subscribe, because this story will challenge what you think you know about justice. Now, take a breath, keep your eyes on Gate 12A, and listen closely. This video is about to begin. The attendant's scanner chirped, then fell silent. A red box blinked on her handheld screen. Data mismatch. Ava Tran hesitated. The hum of the cabin dimmed behind the curtain. She looked up at drmarcushale.com, still, one hand on his ticket, then at the man already seated in 2A. Greg Whitmore, platinum cufflinks, linen jacket, the kind of confidence that owned the air. "Sir," Ava said, lowering her voice, "I'll need to verify your ticket again." Marcus didn't flinch. His eyes softened, as if he understood before she finished the sentence. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out his wallet, leather, worn at the edges. He took out a small metallic badge, silver, etched with the FAA logo, and a tiny embedded chip that caught the light. The cabin lights shimmered against it, throwing a small beam of reflected silver onto the wall. Ava blinked. "That's not a normal ID." "Sir, this looks OSIN." "Official?" Marcus finished gently. "It is." Greg leaned forward, smirking. "Oh, come on. Anyone can buy a badge online. Try Etsy." A few soft laughs broke from the back rows, nervous, guilty. Ava's cheeks flushed. She looked around, seeking backup, but her partner was still at the galley. She tapped the scanner again. The screen flashed the same red text, "Data not found." "It's probably just the system lagging," she murmured. Greg crossed his legs, voice dripping with condescension. "Or maybe it's just not there." The words sat in the air, like static. Marcus breathed in slowly. His hand didn't move from the counter. The metal badge caught another shard of light, a quiet, stubborn shimmer that made Greg glance away for half a second. A few rows behind them, a young man raised his phone, pretending to scroll. The red dot blinked. "Hey, I'm just documenting this," he whispered, voice half to himself. Noah Price, travel YouTuber, luxury reviewer, had just started a live stream. 40 viewers popped onto his screen. A comment scrolled. "What's going on? Why is she checking him twice?" Another. "He looks calm AF. Rich people don't argue like that." Ava glanced at the phone, her anxiety sharpening. "Oh no, this is being filmed." She straightened her shoulders. "Please, just one more scan." Marcus handed her the pass again, his fingers steady, eyes kind. "Do what you have to do, Miss Tran." The way he said her name, polite, exact, and unthreatening, disarmed her. She nodded and rescanned. The device buzzed, then froze. For 3 long seconds, the sound of the airplane's air system filled the silence. Then the red light blinked again. Data mismatch. Greg exhaled dramatically, shaking his head. "This is ridiculous. He probably printed that pass at home." Someone snorted from the far side of the cabin. Noah's chat exploded. "Whoa, this is uncomfortable." "That's profiling. I'm staying tuned." Ava swallowed hard. She could feel the phone's lens on her face, the judgment of thousands in potential replay. She turned to Marcus, eyes pleading. "Sir, I'm sorry, it's just protocol. I can't override it without my supervisor." "Of course," Marcus said softly. "Do what you must." He set the metallic badge on the counter beside the ticket, the FAA emblem reflecting against the cabin, light, steady, unwavering. Greg rolled his eyes. He's really committing to this bit. Marcus didn't answer. He only looked at his seat with a kind of restrained sorrow. Not for himself, but for the absurdity of the moment. Then the overhead speaker cut through again, neutral and cold. "Gate 12, A, final verification now underway, 4 minutes remaining." Noah's phone buzzed viewer count climbing to 90, then 100. Someone commented, "That badge looks real, though." He's too calm to be lying. Ava stared at the flashing red screen again, then at the silver badge. For a split second, she saw herself reflected on its surface, small, nervous, uncertain. "Sir," she whispered, barely audible. "Yes? I think the system's wrong." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "It happens." And that was all he said. No anger, no defense. Just those 2 words, a quiet verdict against everything that pretended to be flawless. Outside, the intercom voice counted down. 3 minutes to close the gate close. The light on the badge flickered once more, steadying into a glow. Noah zoomed in. The viewers kept rising. And somewhere between the red text on the scanner and the reflection of silver, the audience, both inside the plane and watching through a phone, began to feel it. The system wasn't broken. It was just built to doubt the wrong people. Ava Tran's throat felt dry. The red light on the scanner hadn't changed. Passengers were whispering now, their voices a nervous tide washing against the thin veneer of first-class calm. Greg shifted in the seat, tapping his fingers on the armrest like a judge impatient for a verdict. Marcus stood motionless, one hand on the back of seat 2A, his badge still glinting faintly on the counter. The air conditioning sighed. Someone cleared their throat. Ava finally exhaled and tried. "Sir, perhaps if I just—" "Would you check the manifest, please?" Marcus interrupted softly. The words were even calm. Not a demand, not a plea. A request, delivered with surgical precision. Greg chuckled, leaning back, his voice loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "Sweetheart, don't waste time on him. We both know he's not on that list." The word sweetheart cracked through the air like a slap. Ava froze, eyes flicking to Marcus, then to the rows of watching faces. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her professionalism warred with something else. The sudden awareness that this wasn't just about a ticket anymore. Marcus didn't react, not a flicker. He simply turned his gaze to Greg, studied him like a surgeon observing a small, predictable wound. "Miss Tran," he said, voice steady, "just the manifest." The intercom broke in again, mechanical and unforgiving. "Gate 12A, final verification now underway, 4 minutes remaining." The countdown drilled into everyone's nerves. Ava reached for her tablet, fingers trembling as she scrolled through digital logs. The reflection of Marcus's silver badge caught her eye again, that steady, cold light against the glossy black screen. Greg leaned closer, muttering, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Marcus didn't answer. His silence felt heavier than words. Behind them, Noah Price adjusted his phone. The red light blinked live. Viewer count, 4,982. The comments flew like sparks. "He's too calm for a fake." "That other guy's rude AF." "Sweetheart? Yikes. Sexist much?" Ava's hand hesitated mid-scroll. She could feel the eyes of both men on her, one waiting for her to uphold the rulebook, the other waiting for her to uphold humanity. "Found it," she whispered. Her voice cracked slightly. "Passenger, Hale, Marcus, seat 2A, verified." Greg's eyebrows shot up. "That can't be right," the system said. But Ava didn't look at him. She looked at Marcus, and for the first time since the confrontation began, she smiled a small, trembling acknowledgement that she'd seen through the noise. Then her tablet flickered. A new notification flashed across the top. Email. Fuel sync. Compliance alert. Marcus saw it too. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes sharpened recognition. Quiet power. He turned slightly, glancing toward the window. Everything runs on connection, he murmured. Ava Blink. Sir? Never mind. Noah caught that line on video. His chat lit up again. What did he mean by that? Runs on connection? Is he in tech? Greg exhaled hard, his patience thinning. This is absurd. You're going to hold up a flight because of a software glitch? Ava flinched at his tone, the same entitled cadence she'd heard 1,000 times before from men who used charm like a blade. Sir, she said quietly, please take a seat while I confirm. I am seated, Greg shot back. In my seat. Marcus turned to him, slow, deliberate. No, you're seated in mine. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Even Noah's hand stilled on his phone. Then the overhead lights dimmed as if the plane itself held its breath. Ava stepped back, caught between two truths, two men, and one very public stage. 3 minutes to gate close, the intercom warned. Marcus's phone buzzed. A line of text flashed across the screen. Fuel sync internal. Routing anomaly detected, confirmation required. He silenced it with one thumb, eyes steady on Greg. You were saying? Greg's jaw tightened. The faint red dot of the live stream camera hovered near his face, unblinking. In that moment, everyone, Ava, Noah, the silent rows behind them, felt the shift. Not in words, not in tone, but in presence. Marcus wasn't asking anymore. He was waiting. And for the first time, Greg looked away. The badge gleamed once more under the cabin light, silver cutting through shadow as if reflecting not power but restraint held like a blade still in its sheath. Outside, the voice came again. Gate 12. A final boarding verification. 2 minutes remaining. Noah whispered into his mic. He's not yelling. He's not fighting. But somehow, he's winning. The scanner blinked red again. Steady, unrelenting data sync error. Ava stood frozen, eyes darting between the device and Marcus's calm expression. Greg's smirk had returned, like a man reclaiming his kingdom. A voice from behind the curtain cut through the tension. Supervisor Clark to gate 12A, please. Marcus exhaled once, slow. His reflection in the glossy bulkhead looked almost detached from a man watching his own trial. Clark arrived moments later, late 50s, crisp Navy uniform, voice that carried decades of command. She didn't look at Marcus first. She looked at Greg. Then at Ava. Then the scanner. What's the issue? Ava straightened, almost relieved to hand over control. The system isn't verifying passenger Hale's record. Ticket scan's invalid. Clark nodded once, eyes already narrowing. Sir, if we can't confirm your record, you'll need to step aside until we resolve the issue. Greg folded his arms, satisfied. Finally, someone in charge. Noah's camera caught the scene in wide shot. Marcus standing, Ava wilted between authority and shame, Clark upright as protocol itself. The viewer counter hit 20,213. The chat streamed comments faster than the feed could hold. Number first class gate, trending now. She's just following rules, but damn, this looks bad. He hasn't raised his voice once. Marcus's gaze moved around the cabin. A row of businessmen looked away. One woman reached for her drink. No one spoke. The silence was louder than the engines. He finally said evenly, "That system runs on our servers." Clark frowned. "I'm sorry?" "Your ticketing system. The redundancy architecture it's built on our network." Greg let out a scoff. "You can't possibly expect us to believe you own an airline database." Marcus looked at him, the faintest glint of something unspoken behind his calm. "Not own," he said quietly. Maintain. Clark crossed her arms. Sir, I'm sure you understand. Until we can verify your identity in our system, we can't board you. Marcus tilted his head. And if your system is the problem? The question hung, delicate but sharp. Clark's jaw tightened. The system doesn't make mistakes. It was the kind of line built into every training manual, the kind of faith that held bureaucracies together. Marcus almost smiled, not out of humor, but recognition. He'd heard that sentence before, decades ago, when his software had failed a routine audit because someone else had entered data wrong. He'd written the patch that prevented it from happening again. The scanner blinked red one more time. Data sync error. Gate 12. A final verification takes 2 minutes to close, the intercom warned. Ava swallowed, voice trembling. Supervisor, maybe if we reboot the SED. Procedure doesn't allow for that, Clark snapped. You'll step aside, sir. Noah's live stream caught everything, the tone, the command, the stillness that followed. 20,000 viewers leaned closer to their screens. Marcus didn't move. His eyes didn't blink. Only his hand, slowly, reached for the badge on the counter. He lifted it between 2 fingers, the silver emblem flickering under cabin light. You're right, he said softly. Procedures don't allow for mistakes, only for repetition. Clark blinked, unsure how to answer. Greg rolled his eyes. Whatever that means. Noah whispered into his mic. That's the quietest mic drop I've ever seen. The chat exploded. He said that so calm, like he knows something we don't. Repetition that line hit. System versus man. Damn. Ava's tablet flashed again. She turned it around, desperate for Clark to see. Supervisor, look, it's the system. It's looping. The red text scrolled endlessly. Data sync error, retry, error, retry. Clark hesitated, then forced a smile for the passengers. Technical issue, ladies and gentlemen, will be resolved shortly. Her words were airless, scripted. Behind her, Greg muttered. Unbelievable. Some people just don't belong in first. Marcus turned toward him. Not with anger, with something colder, almost pity. No, he said. Some systems don't belong in charge. Noah caught the line perfectly. His camera focused on Marcus's face, the faint reflection of the red blinking scanner pulsing against his cheek like a slow heartbeat. Data sync error. Data sync error. The light painted the cabin in rhythmic flashes of failure. Marcus slipped his badge back into his jacket, eyes drifting toward the glass panel separating first class from the jet bridge. Beyond it, the terminal lights shimmered like distant cities, systems within systems, each pretending to be flawless. The intercom returned. Final boarding call for passenger Hale. Clark gestured toward the exit. Sir, you'll need to wait outside the gate. Noah's hand trembled, holding the phone. The comment stream turned into a wall of outrage. He's being kicked out on camera. This is unreal. She said the system doesn't make mistakes? Marcus adjusted his tie, the movement precise, almost ceremonial. If the system doesn't make mistakes, he murmured, then it doesn't need people to fix them. Clark frowned, uncertain if it was sarcasm or prophecy. Greg looked satisfied again. Ava just looked tired. The silence stretched until it hurt. Even the soft murmur of the cabin pressurization seemed too loud, a hiss under the weight of judgment. Ava looked down at her shoes. Clark's voice broke through, measured, official, unyielding. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the first class section until we can verify your record. There was a pause, the kind that swallows air. Marcus didn't speak right away. His hand rested lightly on the counter, fingers curled just so, the metallic badge still between them. The light from the cabin caught its surface one last time before he slipped it back into his jacket. Understood, he said. Clark nodded, already turning toward Greg, who reclined with visible relief. We appreciate your patience, Mr. Whitmore. Not a problem, Greg said, crossing his arms. I just hope this doesn't delay us. The smugness in his tone was a blade disguised as courtesy. Ava's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to say something. Anything but her training strangled the words before they could form. Noah's camera zoomed in. The live stream counter ticked past 20,000. Marcus adjusted his tie, not out of vanity, but a ritual to keep composure intact when dignity was being stripped. The chat scrolled fast enough to blur. Why isn't anyone stopping this? He's so calm, it's painful. This is how powerlessness looks. Marcus picked up his carry-on, the handle squeaking softly. The sound cut through the hush like a sigh too loud. Ava glanced up, then brief, guilty, and immediately looked away. "Sir," Clark said, pointing toward the partition. "Please wait beyond the first-class divider. We'll call you if it's resolved." "Of course," Marcus replied. His tone was even, his posture perfect, but something in his voice carried the faint tremor of exhaustion, the fatigue of someone who had fought this same invisible battle too many times in too many rooms. As he turned, Noah whispered into the phone. "He's walking away. They're actually making him leave." The chat detonated. Unreal. This feels wrong. He's handling it better than I would. Marcus walked toward the curtain. Each step sounded heavier than it should have, the weight of eyes pressing down on his back. At the divider, he paused. The cabin light flickered above him, reflecting briefly off the metal frame. He looked down at his shoes, then at the floor pattern that seemed to blur beneath the dim lighting. Ava's voice wavered behind him. "Siri." He turned slightly. "It's all right, Miss Tran." His expression softened, not pity, not anger, just tired grace. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "you just let the storm pass." The words weren't meant for her, but they found her anyway. They found everyone. Ava froze. Clark blinked. Even Greg looked momentarily unsure whether to smirk or apologize. But Marcus didn't wait for reactions. He pushed the curtain aside. The sound of its fabric sweeping against the metal rail was the loudest thing in the cabin. Noah's lens stayed on him, capturing the faint gleam of the badge tucked inside his jacket as he stepped out. The chat slowed, then burst again. Dozens of small human hearts trying to reconcile calm with injustice. 2 minutes to gate close, the intercom warned. The voice was sterile, automatic, indifferent. Marcus stopped just beyond the divider, near the emergency exit row. The light there was colder, the hum sharper. A flight attendant from economy peeked out, curious, then retreated, understanding more from the look in his eyes than any announcement could explain. He set his bag down, fingers tightening around the handle for a moment before releasing it. His breathing evened out. One slow inhale, one controlled exhale. On Noah's screen, comments flooded in. "He's out of first. Jesus." That line, "let the storm pass," I felt that. You can tell he's holding something in. The phone camera lingered, capturing Marcus from the side, the clean geometry of restraint. Behind the curtain, Greg asked for champagne. Ava's voice, trembling slightly, answered, "Of course, sir." Clark checked her watch. "We're closing the gate." Noah's viewers hit 22,000. The feed trembled as he whispered, "They're really going to leave him behind." Marcus heard all the murmurs, the clink of glasses, the mechanical certainty of the boarding call. He smiled faintly, almost invisible. Then he whispered to himself, too low for the camera, but loud enough for anyone listening closely to feel it. "Storms pass, systems don't." And then he stood there, silent, composed in the eye of the storm that refused to rage. The boarding door hissed. The voice came again. Final boarding call for passenger Hale. He didn't move. Marcus stood by the gate wall, bag at his feet, eyes tracing the digital board above the counter. Gate 12, A, boarding. Status, closing at 2. The numbers pulsed red, steady, mechanical. Inside, Supervisor Clark pressed her earpiece. "Yes, I'm still waiting for confirmation from Central." A pause. "Yes, passenger Hale Marcus. No, I've rechecked. System mismatch persists. Her tone stayed clipped, efficient, the language of procedures. Ava lingered near the curtain, glancing at Marcus through the gap, her hands twisting a napkin into a knot. "Ma'am," she whispered, "what if the system's wrong?" Clark didn't even turn around. "The system doesn't make mistakes, Miss Tran." Ava hesitated. "But it keeps looping. Error. Retry. Error." "That means data's corrupted," Clark snapped. "Protocol says we cannot override corruption without IT validation." The word corruption landed heavier than it should. Noah's voice drifted from behind his phone. "They're calling Central. It's still red. The gate's about to close." Viewer count climbed, 31,000. The feed title read, "Number First Class Gate. He built calm under fire." Marcus exhaled, turned, and walked back through the curtain. The flight attendant at the galley opened her mouth to protest, but didn't. He moved like someone crossing a courtroom, not a cabin. Clark saw him approach. "Sir, please remain outside until your system agrees with itself?" Marcus's tone was gentle, but it silenced the space. Ava stepped aside. Even Greg, who'd been leaning smugly in his seat, sat up a little straighter. Marcus stopped by the scanner, watching the red light pulse against the counter. The repetition almost looked alive, now a heartbeat made of error. "Procedure requires system match," Clark repeated into her mic. "Procedure requires system match," the automated voice on her tablet echoed back. The repetition built its own rhythm, mechanical, senseless, holy in its devotion to itself. "Ma'am," Ava tried again. "Please, he's not lying. You saw his ID." Clark raised a hand. "Miss Tran, you will follow the procedure." Marcus's voice came then low, deliberate. "It does make mistakes." Clark turned defensive. "Excuse me?" "The system," he said. "It does make mistakes." The cabin went still. "Sir, with all due respect, I built it." No one spoke. Even Noah lowered his phone slightly, as if the gravity in the room had shifted. "You what?" Clark asked. Marcus nodded, slowly. "The redundancy routing, the data mirrors, the fallback protocols you rely on to verify passenger manifests, all of it. My company built the network you're using right now." Ava's breath caught. Greg blinked. Clark's voice cracked for the first time. "Then, you understand how this works. Better than most." He gestured at the flashing red light. "Your system's pulling from a corrupted redundancy node. It's verifying against stale data." "That's impossible," Clark said. "We just passed a systems audit." Marcus almost smiled. "Audits don't fix everything. They just document the illusion of order." Noah's camera shook in his hand. The chat was a storm of disbelief and awe. He built the system. Wait, what? They're arguing with the guy who made it. The intercom voice cut in again, as if mocking the scene. "Final boarding call for passenger Hale. The gate closes in 2 minutes." Ava flinched. Clark raised her chin, clinging to the only thing left authority. "Sir, regardless of your involvement, without system confirmation, I cannot permit." "You're quoting rules to their author," Marcus said softly. The words landed without volume, but with undeniable weight. Clark opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted to the scanner, to the blinking red text. "Data sync error," Ava whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "It's not just wrong, it's broken." Marcus looked at her truly and nodded once, gratitude behind his calm. "That's how it starts," he said. "A system breaks, and people stop seeing it because they're trained to trust it more than their own eyes." Outside the window, the runway lights glimmered like veins in the dark. The clock on the gateboard shifted, 1:30. Noah raised the phone again. "He's explaining it. Everyone's frozen. You can feel it." The viewers exploded. This is the turning point. "You're quoting rules to their author holy line." Clark finally exhaled. "I'll call the captain." Marcus nodded, then stepped back toward the divider. "Do that. Tell her the system's not wrong because of me. It's wrong because it stopped listening. The LED above flickered again. The red dimmed to orange. The LED over the gate blinked. One gate closing. The sound of the ticking second-hand feint, metronomic, filled the silence that had become unbearable. Noah Price's phone buzzed in his palm. He glanced down. A notification popped up from an account with a gray checkmark. GRS, compliance verified. Is that Dr. Hale? Noah's breath caught. He typed back before he could think. Yes. Live streaming now. Within seconds, the viewer count leapt from 32,000 to 81,400. Comments burst like fireworks. Wait, GRS? That's the routing company. He's their CEO? Oh my God, they're detaining the guy who runs their infrastructure. Inside the cabin, Marcus lifted his head, posture straightening. It wasn't defiance, it was recognition, the quiet certainty of someone who had given the system one last chance to listen. I'm not leaving the gate, he said. Clark's earpiece crackled. She pressed it tighter. Central just called back. We're two. Don't call Central, Marcus interrupted softly. Check your routing log. His tone wasn't angry. It was surgical, precise. Ava looked between them, heart hammering. Supervisor, please, he's right. Try it. Clark hesitated, glancing at the LED clock. 0:59. The digits pulsed in red. We don't have time for Ixblade. Exactly, Marcus said. You have 60 seconds. Open the routing log. Noah zoomed in, his whisper trembling with adrenaline. He's taking control. He's literally telling them what to do. The chat surged again. This feels like a movie. He's done being polite. Watch the supervisor's face. Clark's hand hovered over the scanner, the red light blinking against her uniform. Routing log access requires admin credentials. Marcus took a step forward, his voice a measured calm against the ticking seconds. The same credentials my company issued last quarter. Ava's eyes widened. You mean? Yes, Marcus said. The backup authentication lives on GRS servers. Type this. Verify root, GRS, root sync. Clark froze. The seconds ticked. 0:44, 0:43. She looked at him as if weighing the risk of disobedience against the certainty of exposure. Noah's phone trembled in his grip. The live chat now scrolled too fast to read. Ava's voice broke through, urgent. Supervisor, 1 minute to close. Clark exhaled sharply, then began typing. Each keystroke echoed like a hammer. O, U, T, E, S, Y, N, C. Enter. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the screen flickered. The red light turned amber. Text rolled across the monitor. Sync complete record found. Clark blinked. Passenger. Hale. Marcus. Seat 2A. Verified by GRS root. Ava's hand flew to her mouth. Greg's smirk collapsed into confusion. Noah whispered, "Oh my God." Marcus exhaled through his nose, shoulders loosening slightly. "Now," he said quietly, "would you like me to board? Or would you like a network outage across your fleet?" Clark didn't answer right away. Her face, trained in decades of control, flickered through disbelief, calculation, and the slow, sinking shame of realization. The intercom voice returned, neutral and absurdly calm. Final boarding call for passenger Hale. The gate closes in 1 minute. Marcus's voice cut through the sound. Not yet. Ava glanced up. The LED clock blinked. 0 hours, 1 minute, holding there as if time itself had paused to witness. The hum of the aircraft deepened. The air felt charged. Noah's live stream hit 100,000 viewers. The comments scrolled in awe. He reversed the system. Asterisk. He didn't yell. He just knew. This is justice unfolding in real time. Clark lowered her gaze, the weight of protocol collapsing under truth. Captain Ruiz is being informed, she whispered. Please, wait 1 moment. Marcus nodded once, The faintest curve at the corner of his mouth. Not triumph, but closure approaching. "Take your time," he said. "You've got a minute left." The LED ticked down. 0 hours and 59 seconds. 0 hours and 58 seconds. Each second thudded through the air like a heartbeat on trial. The seconds that followed were too still to be real. The LED above the gate hung at 0 hours and 41 seconds, frozen between endings. Then footsteps. Measured, steady. A woman in a captain's uniform appeared at the gate. Her presence cut through the tension like a blade through fog. Captain Elena Ruiz, 40-something, composed, eyes sharp with both authority and empathy. She stopped just inside the threshold, scanning the faces. The supervisor, the attendant, the passenger holding his ground. "What's going on here?" Clark straightened instantly. "Captain, there's been a verification error. Passenger Hale's record won't match the manifest." Ruiz's gaze landed on Marcus. A flicker of recognition passed through her features, the kind of recognition that lives in silence, built on years of technical briefings and names at the bottom of critical memos. "Dr. Hale?" she said. The use of doctor dropped into the air like a verdict. Marcus inclined his head once. "Captain." Clark blinked. "You know him?" Ruiz's tone was clipped, unshakable. "Enough." The word ricocheted across the cabin. Ava's hand flew to her mouth. Noah's live stream trembled. His chat erupted. "He's not impersonating anyone," Ruiz said. "He's the architect of the routing system you're flying on." Silence, a perfect, crystalline silence that vibrated with disbelief and awe. Greg's smirk vanished. His throat bobbed, the sound of guilt barely audible over the hum of engines idling. Ava's eyes filled. Tears slipped quietly. Relief and shame blended into something wordless. Clark's jaw fell open. The scanner in her hand felt suddenly heavier, as if aware of its own irony. Ruiz nodded toward it. "Scan his badge again." Clark obeyed, almost reverently. The metallic ID gleamed as Marcus handed it over, no longer a challenge, but a key. The scanner flashed red once, paused, and turned green. Access granted. The light washed over Marcus's face, soft and decisive. It wasn't triumph, it was truth, finally being recognized by the very machine that had doubted it. The intercom blared. "All doors are closing." Ruiz looked toward the gate agent. "Hold that door." The gate froze mid-seal. Hydraulic hiss suspended mid-breath. Noah's camera caught it all. The live stream number broke 150,000. Comments scrolled like a storm. Access granted. "This is justice." The captain just stopped the plane for him. Greg stood up halfway, words dying in his throat. I didn't know who you were." Marcus turned, eyes calm. "That's the point." No accusation, no anger, just the quiet weight of truth delivered with surgical precision. Ruiz stepped aside, gesturing toward the cabin. "Dr. Hale, your seat awaits." For the first time, the space between the divider and seat 2A felt like a corridor of reckoning. Marcus walked forward. Not fast, not slow. Ava stepped back to make room, her breath unsteady. Noah whispered into his phone, "He's boarding. They're letting him in. This is it." As Marcus passed Clark, he paused just long enough to meet her eyes. "The system didn't fail you," he said. "It just reflected what you already trusted." Clark swallowed hard, unable to respond. He crossed the threshold. The green light still glowed beside him, reflected faintly in his polished shoes. The scanner beeped one last time, confirming. "Passenger Hale, Marcus. Seat 2A. Verified." He reached his row. Seat 2A waited in the same seat that had started all of this, still warm from someone else's entitlement. He set his bag down, the sound gentle but absolute. Then he sat. For the first time since the confrontation began, he allowed himself a breath that reached all the way to his lungs. Ruiz nodded once to Ava. "Lock the cabin," Ava whispered back. Yes, Captain. And just as she turned to close the overhead bin, Marcus's badge glinted under the light again, the same beam that once accused him, now blessing him. The intercom repeated, "All doors are closing." The hum of the engines steadied, a deep and forgiving sound. The cabin, moments ago charged with tension, had settled into silence thick enough to feel. Greg Whitmore still sat a few rows behind Marcus, shoulders drawn tight, hands clasped. His linen jacket no longer looked sharp, it hung like gilt. Marcus sat in 2A, eyes closed for a breath he hadn't allowed himself all day. Then a voice came, quiet, uncertain. "Dr. Hale?" He turned slightly. Greg was half standing in the aisle, face pale but earnest. "My father worked for your company," Greg said. "He lost his pension when it went under." The words landed without accusation. They were confessions, raw, hesitant, human. Marcus studied him for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "So did my uncle," he said. "Same collapse, same pain." Greg blinked. You lost family too?" "Everyone did," Marcus replied softly. "We just lost them in different ways." For a heartbeat, the two men, divided by privilege, color, and the entire architecture of assumption, existed on the same line of loss. Greg sank back into his seat, eyes glassy. His mouth opened as if to apologize, but no words came. He didn't need to. The silence spoke for him. Ava stood near the galley, watching them both. The tears she'd hidden earlier now fell freely, not from shame, from relief. Justice, it turned out, could sound like forgiveness. Inside the cockpit, Captain Ruiz spoke into her comms. "This is Flight 9182 operations. Initiate system-wide audit per GRS directive." Static crackled. Then a voice confirmed, "Copy that, Captain. Audit commencing. Multiple nodes syncing." Ruiz leaned back in her chair, exhaling for the first time. On her console, a small light blinked to life. Route audit in progress. Within minutes, across the world, in Dallas, in London, in Johannesburg, screens began flashing the same message. Flights paused, systems checked, redundancies recalibrated. It wasn't punishment. It was cleansing. Marcus opened his eyes. Through the window, the runway lights stretched like threads of data routes connecting cities, lives, systems. He watched as a maintenance vehicle rolled by, its signal lamp blinking the same amber hue as the audit light on Ruiz's console. Greg spoke again, voice barely a whisper. "I shouldn't have said what I did." Marcus turned to him. "You said what the system taught you to believe." "And you?" Greg asked. "I built it to be better," Marcus said. "But I forgot people had to use it." Greg nodded, face heavy with something that looked a lot like understanding. Noah's phone buzzed quietly in his lap. The live stream had ended minutes ago, but his notifications hadn't stopped. The clip was everywhere. Millions were watching the playback, the moment the badge turned green. He didn't restart the stream. He just filmed the quiet, the unremarkable, almost sacred calm of two men breathing the same air again. Ruiz's voice echoed faintly through the speaker system. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay due to routing verification. Thank you for your patience." A few passengers sighed, but most stayed silent. Somehow, they understood the delay wasn't inconvenience, it was correction. Marcus looked down at his hands. The metallic badge rested there, warm from his palm. He thought of his uncle's old desk, the framed letter of retirement that never came, the system that had failed them both. Now, somewhere in that same system, red lights were turning amber, amber turning green. "You fixed it," Greg said quietly. Marcus shook his head. "No, we started fixing it." Outside, the night glowed faintly orange as ground lights shimmered against the mist. In the cockpit, Ruiz watched the audit progress bar crawl forward 15%, 27%, 43%. The reflection of it danced across her face, and for a moment, she looked less like a pilot and more like a guardian. The hum deepened again. The plane was alive, not as a vessel, but as part of something larger, breathing, self-correcting. Marcus glanced once more at Greg, who sat quietly, eyes fixed on the same distant runway lights. Neither spoke again. They didn't have to. The engines began their slow, rolling growl, a low thunder beneath calm. Outside, the tarmac shimmered under pale sodium light. Inside, the cabin was hushed, not from tension anymore, but from relief. Ava Tran sat in the jump seat, phone in hand, eyes on a message that had just appeared in the crew app. New boarding verification policy activated. Effective immediately. She read it twice. The timestamp was not next week, not pending approval, now. Ava turned, glancing toward 2A. Dr. Marcus Hale sat quietly, looking out the window as the first raindrops streaked down the glass. The light from the runway flickered across his face, soft gold and blue. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the metal badge, scuffed, scratched, but unbroken. The emblem still caught the cabin light, shimmering faintly like a living thing. He turned it over in his hand once, then leaned forward and slid it into the narrow maintenance slot beneath his console, the same slot used by crew diagnostics. A soft chime answered him. The cabin display blinked. Seat 2A, confirmed. The same words from hours earlier, but now they carried weight. Not permission, but acknowledgement. Ava watched, heart full. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Across the aisle, Greg sat silent, eyes lowered, the sound of engines drowning out his thoughts. Marcus exhaled through his nose, a faint smile forming. The line between vindication and peace blurred into something simple existence, unchallenged. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Flight 918 cleared for taxi. The plane rolled forward, slow at first, then steady. The runway lights drifted past, in rhythmic sequence, red, amber, white-like data packets, pulsing through fiber lines. Ava's phone vibrated again. Another notification. Policy note. Manual verification now requires dual validation, plus human review override. She smiled. Quiet progress, quiet justice. Noah, still seated near the back, looked at his phone. The livestream replay was trending in over 20 countries. The screen showed the paused frame of Marcus standing by the scanner, the green light reflected on his face. The top comment read, "Justice can be quiet too." Noah hesitated for a long moment, thumb hovering above the end stream button, then he pressed it. The screen faded to black, leaving only his own reflection staring back. In the cockpit, Captain Ruiz watched her console. The words "Route Audit Complete, Policy Sync Successful" glowed softly. She smiled to herself and whispered, "About time." Back in 2A, Marcus leaned against the headrest, eyes half closed. He thought of his uncle's photo, the one that had hung above his desk for 20 years, and of how systems outlast people, unless people decide to make them better. He reached down and touched the metal badge again. The warmth of the cabin had softened its chill. Outside, the rain intensified, streaks crossing the window like white code streaming down a screen. Ava's voice came quietly over the PA, routine, yet different now. "Cabin crew, prepare for departure." Marcus smiled faintly at the echo of normalcy. The engines surged. As the plane began to move, he murmured to himself the same line that had begun it all, but now reclaimed. Seat 2A, confirmed. No one else heard it, but that was fine. It wasn't for anyone else anymore. Ava looked toward him one last time. He caught her eye, gave a small nod. She returned it, a wordless contract between witness and truth. The aircraft lifted its nose, and for a heartbeat, gravity hesitated as if the world itself allowed a moment of balance before surrendering to flight. Below, in data centers across continents, servers flickered green where red had once blinked. Above, the plane climbed through a sky washed clean by rain. No applause, no headlines, just a quiet correction. And somewhere in that silence, a system learned humility, a man regained his name, and justice finally stopped shouting. So tell me, what did you feel when the system finally listened? Relief? Anger? Or something in between? Drop your thoughts in the comments, give this story a like, and share it with someone who's ever been told to wait outside. And if you haven't already, subscribe because the next story might remind you that even quiet justice still speaks loud.